reiterate the point that I made earlier, which is that the breakdown we have for these expenditures is a new paradigm, is a new way of doing things. Because in the past, you will have just broad headings, and it is in accord with the commitment and tenets of transparency, which got the Chief of Staff's office to give these breakdowns. And so the impression that is being created that somehow or rather this is an expose or this is some scoop or a leak or something of that sort is never the case. This is a document that was tendered before the Finance Committee of Parliament by the Chief of Staff's office, and the rationale for giving this information to Parliament, which is really not consistent or which is not in accord with past practices, was to demonstrate to the Finance Committee of Parliament that the age-old problem of budgetary overruns by government or public institutions, particularly the office of the president. I've already indicated to you that, for instance, in 2014, the S.Y.L. Mahama administration ran a particular budgetary item almost 7 times the approved amount. That there's been a lot of discipline in that office, and that at long last we can all be encouraged that the office of the president is keeping within the budgetary allocations approved by Parliament itself. Now, you've given me a one item on foreign travels. But what I do know, and the figures I have here, is that the budgetary allocation to the Chief of Staff on goods and services cost center, the cost center of Chief of Staff Secretariat, which is 222,136,885 Ghana cedis. The amount spent by this office is far less of some 30 to 40 million Ghana cedis as we speak. And that was really the point that the office sought to make to Parliament, which is that for the first time, for now, we are beginning to stay with him. And you go and check. You are a journalist. You are an astute one at that. Because you go and check from the office of the president. And the lady that she is, and you know how ladies are good with discipline and keeping of funds and management of funds. And I say this to her credit, and I say it with pride. The Chief of Staff, the current Chief of Staff, is one of the people who engages in a lot of scrutiny of all expenditure. And sadly, if you go to the public institutions, the situation is mostly that that's for buying money or public institution. You can just walk in and say, I want to buy 10 ties or 10 car ties, 100 car ties, cost so much, and then put in an invoice and claim the money, and the rest of it we all know. This Chief of Staff will scrutinize. She will send emissaries into the market to check figures, and even sometimes he makes a quite unpopular amount among the working population at the presidency. And you can check that. You can check that out. The discipline, the prudence, the frugality that she brings to bear on the management of public funds is completely unprecedented. Now, the other point I like to make.
Forgive me, just so we can wrap up on this first point. And before we do that, a quick announcement. Serious traffic is building up on the motorway on the Tema to Accra side, right from the Tema end of the toll booth. And it's starting to look quite like it's going to be a long morning for those of you caught in it. So just to be informed, if you need to get into Accra, perhaps you want to think of other ways of doing that. The Tema to Accra side of the motorway seriously choked with traffic as we speak. So yes, I was saying let's wrap up on this point. What you're saying, if I've understood you, is that as a whole, the office actually saved money because you spent under the budget that was approved as part of the 2019 budget. But I asked about a specific item, which was the foreign travel and expenses. And the point I was making was that Parliament approved 30 million for that specific item. Your expenditure was 60 million. And I was asking what accounted for the difference, because to my mind, if you had stuck to the budget on that particular item, you might have ended up saving even more, an extra 30 million on top of whatever you did save.
Well, the fundamental point I've made, which I want to repeat, is that the global budgetary allocation for goods and services, for which foreign travels is a component, the office has kept within budget. the global figure which was approved, the ceiling for the office of the president or the secretariat of the chief of staff was some amount in excess of 222 million. As we speak, the amount spent is, I won't say way, but it's less than the approved amount. And don't forget that before Parliament makes these approvals, Parliament takes into account the totality of the variables, the work plan you present to Parliament, the president before them, the conventions, and what is expected, the work or the mandate that you are expected to execute. They put all of that together and then come to the conclusion that the ceiling that has been given to you is prudent, is value for money, and that you need that amount of money to be able to execute your mandate. On the specific issue of foreign travel, I'll be happy to see where you've picked this from.
Okay.
But what I do know is that when we talk about foreign expenses for travels or foreign travels, we're not talking about the president alone. We're talking about the president, we're talking about the vice president, we're talking about other high-ranking officials of the presidency. In fact, and even more importantly, and the part that sometimes take a chunk of the cost, we're talking about envoys, we're talking about emissaries, we're talking about diplomatic missions, we're talking about economic diplomacy, where the president sends people out. All of that is what we classify as foreign travels. So the opposition and those who want to perpetuate mischief, they are always very happy to put it at the president alone. He's been traveling for the past 9 months and the cost of it is 60 million Ghana cedis. I'm saying that we can do a lot more thorough interrogation of the issues, and you are very adept at that. You can do it. And I'm saying to you that we are not talking about travels by just the president. We're talking about travels by the president, by the vice president, by other high-ranking officials of the presidency. We're talking about, most importantly, envoys. Every now and again, foreign heads of state and foreign government sent envoys to our president to lobby him on one issue or the other, to engage him on economic diplomacy. The government of Ghana engages in that, and the Ghanaian people expect our government to be active on the international plane. And this president is very active on the international plane, and we do get benefits out of this international activism. And it's all of those put together that which constitutes foreign travels. You see one other one that they will pick out and just go on and on with the mischief making, which is refreshment, and think that and create the impression that refreshment is some cup of tea or drinks that the presidency pitches. And the chief of staff, once again, you check it out. When it comes to these things, she's absolutely disciplined on them and insistent on value for money. We're talking about government hosting foreign dignitaries, hosting foreign heads of states who visit our country, and for instance, the president hosts senior citizens, and there's a banquet for them, and so the impression that is being created that so much is being spent on just refreshment for the president is wrong. President Akufo-Addo, what I see, the man drives in his own car which he bought in the year 2011, and everybody who works with him, everybody who's around him knows that this is a man who is not into all sorts of extravagant expenditure. These are expenditures or budgets or ceilings which were interrogated and approved by Parliament, and thankfully and proudly, the chief of staff, the disciplinarian that she is, has managed to keep her office and expenditure within budget, which is indeed a fundamental point.
You've made that point. And you were asking where I got that figure, the 30 million.
Now, I'll be happy to look at it.
Yes,
I don't know what.
So I'm looking at the audit budget detail of the 2019 budget. The appendix that has all the details of what has been approved. And on this document, there is a page allocated to the office of the chief of staff, and it has the entire breakdown of what has been approved for you. So on that page, under the heading travel and transport, you will find foreign travel cost and expenses, and the amount there is 30 million. So what I'm suggesting is that even though you have pointed out that this involves all the emissaries and all the other people who travel under the office of the chief of staff, your projection was that 30 million cedis would cover all of these expenses. My question is, what is it that took the expenditure on that item to 62 million, which is more than double the amount?
We have to look at that. We have to interrogate that. But what
this is from the Finance Ministry website, by the way. This breakdown
no problem.
that I'm
not doubting your
to.
source. I'm not doubting your source at all. But I'm just the knowledge I have about the working of the chief of staff, and I have to look at the claim you've made and examine the basis for it. But on top of my head, I can say to you that the Chief of Staff's office is, if you want, some sort of, for want of a better expression, an office which plays all kinds of roles, multiple roles, and which is always in ready to intervene in difficult circumstances. There are so many examples which are running through my mind, but it may not be appropriate to put them out here. When there is some difficulty with the situation with regards to finances of certain parts of the government, the first port of call, and everybody who's worked in the government will tell you, the first port of call is the Chief of Staff's office. She's always having to be called in to intervene on in a matter, in an emergency matter of one sort or the other. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this matter was examined and it turned out that the amount approved, and don't also forget that the broad outfit for which she's head of is the Office of Government Machinery, which comprises multiple cost centers, multiple institutions. And you will not believe it. The Ghana AIDS Commission, the several other agencies, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, SIGA, and so many other institutions are all cost centers under the broad rubric of Office of Government Machinery, for which the Chief of Staff heads, and she gets to intervene every now and again to make sure that the system runs. It may well be, but she's had to be called in to fund certain foreign trips which in her view were necessary and which had to be taken upon by her office. The expenses had to be taken upon by her office. But we'll look at that. But what is absolutely, and I like to emphasize on that, but what is absolutely important is that the overall budgetary allocation to her office, she has disciplined expenditure in that office such that we have stayed within that budget. And that, I say to you, Kojo, is unprecedented, because as I said to you in 2014, budgetary overrun alone was 7 times. This time around, thank God, we have an office and a Chief of Staff who is keeping her expenses within budget.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the other cost centers under the Office of Government Machinery. And I'm looking at the Cabinet Secretariat. Yes, on their list, you can see here that they spend taxpayers' money on school fees and funeral donations. Can you help us understand that?
You know, I've said this before and I want to repeat it. Reluctantly, we may have to come out with almost all the breakdown of all previous expenditures. Personally, I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's useful. And I'll be very reluctant in doing that. But with the sort of mischief and if you want propaganda which is going on, we may not have a choice but to put the details are there.
I'd rather we didn't, get into they did this and we did that.
I'm not interested in that.
Your government, the government at the moment.
In that at all.
Yeah, help us understand.
I'm not interested in that at all.
Why this government is spending money on school fees and funeral and whose school fees, by the way?
We can check all of those out and furnish you with the details. I know the Cabinet Secretary is a very astute public servant who's led a very considerable and reputable life in the public service of our country. I do know that. You have to find out the context or the circumstances in which this amount was spent, and until then, 10,000 Ghana cedis. You are right, isn't it?
Yes, for the school fees, and then for the funeral donations, it's 26,300
Ghana cedis.
Yeah,
so we were examining that. Funeral donations, the office, in some circumstances, come in when it comes to funerals. I mean, for instance,
why? Are we doing that with taxpayers' money?
Well, I'm not saying I'm very reluctant in giving examples, but for instance, there's a lot of funerals that the state intervenes. I mean, the former Secretary General of UN, former Vice President, some astute public servant, somebody who probably is led his whole adult life serving the state in the public service or the civil service. I mean, I don't want to give examples, but as Deputy Chief of Staff, I have sadly been around where very hard-working staff either have passed away, civil servants, chief director or certain director of a department has passed away, and the office deems it appropriate to make a donation in order to motivate workers for the esprit de corps and the rest, or a parent of a very hardworking staff, or somebody who's dedicated his or her life to the service of the state or the country, and so on and so on. So I'm saying, if you put it out like that, office of the president or cabinet secretary has paid 10,000 Ghana cedis for funeral donations, it may send a certain signal which may not be in a proper context. And I'm saying to you that in the office, you have people, civil servants and public servants who work themselves out. They are required by law to close at, say, 5 o'clock, and yet the political appointees will keep them in the office, which is the norm in the office of President Akufo-Addo. Keep them in office till midnight and call people in while they are home 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And if you want end of year, and the office thinks that as a way of motivating its staff for them to give out more, you're going to give them a penny here, a penny there as end of year bonus, and it's captured as Christmas donation. If you put it out that how do you use the taxpayers' money for Christmas donations, it may sound odd, but if you put it in the right context, you may appreciate it. So that's.
But I guess that even enhances the reason for conversations like this.
Oh yes,
because
important.
The questions do require answers. Otherwise, there will be assumptions made.
And if I may add, don't forget the cabinet secretary. She's the only, if you want, quote unquote, political appointee. She's not so much even a political appointee. She wears the rubric of the hat of some political appointee and also a civil servant or public servant. Her whole secretariat is made up of civil servants. So funeral donation, for instance, the director of hers who works so hard, the mother is passed or the father is passed, and she deems it appropriate that some 2,000 Ghana cedis be given to him in order for him to fuel his vehicle. I don't know, but we'll find out.
Yeah, in other parts of the world, what tends to be the norm in situations like this, where there's a bereavement or there's a problem or some sort of welfare problem, donations are taken so that members of staff can individually contribute towards that contribution at the funeral, or towards is that not an option that the presidency and other state institutions should be considering, rather than simply taking the allocations from the taxpayers' money and just directly making these donations from there? Shouldn't it be rather more of an individual thing on voluntary basis done by colleagues?
Well, Kojo, the point you've raised is a very legitimate, and I'm not too sure legitimate, but it's a very important point you've raised. Let me put it that way. Now, we have to all examine these matters, Kojo. We have to, and that's why I said I'm happy to bring you past expenditures so we can begin as a country to have this conversation and interrogate them. Okay. And don't forget, you have to also situate it in our cultural and traditional setting. You say in other countries, different culture, different setting. Here now we need to look at all of them. I know there are some expenditure which has been part and parcel of our public exchequer for many years, which if we put out here, some people may find it scandalous, but which if you put in a context, in a cultural setting, you may find it difficult to say that is struck out henceforth.
Okay.
Funeral donations in particular. In our country, Ghana, there are certain funerals. One big chief is passed somewhere, in some part of the country, and the president, for instance, is invited, and the president gets there, he doesn't bonsoir, or the president says, my little resources I have, I'm bonsoir of 500 Ghana cedis. And you may not, you can imagine the uproar and what have you. I'm not taking a position on that, but that is what we have. And that is the cultural and traditional setting in which we find ourselves as a country. Is it a good thing? Should we continue with that? You have your view, I may have my view. The country will have to take its view. Should we abandon it? It's another matter. But I'm saying to you that is what we have now. But what is important, what I can say, and what I believe the Ghanaian people should be interested in, is that one, these questions are important. We should continue to ask them as to how our taxes are spent, as to how the public purse is managed. the questions you are asking me and the questions that I believe your listeners will throw into this show to post to me, these are legitimate things. We should keep up with it, insisting on transparency, insisting on discipline, insisting on safeguarding the public purse. That is absolutely important. It's the only way we can move forward as a country. The president is very interested in that, and it is the reason why we have put out all these details before Parliament. But most importantly, and Kojo, I can assure the Ghanaian people through your medium that this president is absolutely committed to protecting the public purse. This is a president who rides his own vehicle, the private vehicle which he bought in 2011. This is a president, and everybody can check, who runs a very lean system as a president, even most of the time to the displeasure of his security operatives and guards and the rest. And he insists on running a lean. When the president is in Accra on official duties, the president has insisted on a convoy of not more than 5. And it's been a battle between the president and his handlers, and he's insisted on that. You get to President Akufo-Addo's outfit and office, and I say this, Kojo, I'm speaking the truth from my heart. I'm not being partisan, I'm not being political, and everybody can check on it. This is a very frugal president, very disciplined president. Akufo-Addo really will not bother about any and everything. He gets on with everything. Whatever you provide, he's happy with it, and he will not take anything extravagant. The chief of staff herself, the lady that she is, and Kojo, I insist that you check this out from the presidency, from the transport department to the hospitality department to civil servants to political appointees and to most of us at the presidency. Her reputation is that she's too strict, and if people are taking stuff to her, they will pass it through me first, and and that, because she will. That's chief of staff, and everybody will tell you that. Which is why I'm not surprised that we've kept within budget, and it's never been the case. In many cases, as I said in 2014, budgetary overruns were 7 times. 7 times you provide 10 cedis, they spend 70 cedis. Today, thankfully, the amount that Parliament itself deemed appropriate in order for the Chief of Staff Office to execute its mandate, that budget the Chief of Staff Office has kept within. I'm not going to say she should be commended, but I'm happy that it's happened in the manner that it has.
Okay. Are you ready for some questions from our audience? Lots of them are waiting to ask you a number of questions. Are you ready?
We are their servants.
All right.
Who am I to say I'm not ready to take their questions?
Okay, well, we'll hear questions from you in just a moment. But first, of course, let's move to the groove, as we always do on the Super Morning Show. Is brought to you by Stanbic Bank moving forward. And we're getting excited about KTK fever, so I'm sure you'll understand why we chose this one. The Total Quartz engine oil family, the Quartz 9000 Future 0W20. It's specially conditioned and developed for the latest generation engine. Total Quartz 9000 Future 0W20 delivers excellent engine protection and cleanliness. It increases your oil change interval while reducing your fuel consumption. For optimum performance and efficiency of your car, visit your nearest Total service station and ensure your car is well protected. Join the Total Quartz Nation movement now. Total Quartz, keep your engine younger for longer. All right, we're doing big stories on the Super Morning Show, brought to you by Guarantee Trust Bank. Wouldn't you rather bank with us? Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready, and Latex Foam, your partner for life. So listen, it's time for you to call us. Our guest is the Deputy Chief of Staff, Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor. Why don't you call us? 0302-216-541 or 0244-340-437. Whatever question you have for the Deputy Chief of Staff, he's ready to answer. So call us now. Mr. Jinapor, this is a question I have. In fact, it was sent through by one of our listeners. He's saying, what's the average spend for the president when he travels? Cost of plane rental and so forth. What is the cost of that? On average, when the president takes a trip. This is from, hang on, I'll have a name here. Jesse.
Okay, so what I can say to Jesse is that I can take a look at that and try to give you the average cost. I obviously cannot give you those details now, but I want to repeat and say to Jesse, when they put these figures out, and want you to believe that these are money spent by just the president on his foreign travel. It's not correct. We're talking about the president, and I want to repeat, we're talking about the vice president, we're talking about high-ranking officials of the presidency. The very few times I've traveled, I'm also part of it. We're talking about emissaries, we're talking about diplomats.
Emissaries travel, is that not under foreign affairs?
It depends on how they travel. It depends on if it's a presidential envoy, if the president himself is dispatched them. And even sometimes, as I said, the chief of staff's office play a very, very multifaceted, pivotal role when it comes to the functioning of the government. There are many times that the foreign office itself have run to chief of staff for some sort of support and so on and so forth. So that's what I can say to that.
Okay, let's take our first caller. Uncle Kwame calls from McCarthy Hill. Good morning, Uncle Kwame.
Good morning, Kojo, and good morning to the Jinapor who is struggling to answer your question. And it's so painful that our president, we have a presidential jet. You know, he's struggling to answer your question when you pose that question to him. That why do we anticipated how much for the president's travel, and he ballooned to you know, because we left the presidential plane in the hangar while Akufo-Addo is using a German-made flight to travel all around the country. You claim Akufo-Addo is using his car, a Mercedes-Benz, while working in Ghana. But while he's traveling, he's been spending I mean, this is not fair. This is not fair to Ghana.
So, what's the question? What's your question for the Deputy Chief of Staff?
No, I am not asking him any question, because I am just telling him that you claim Nanado is not the offender, but you are, while he's traveling outside, he spends so much.
Okay, point made. Thank you very much for calling. Fred is in La. Good morning, Fred.
Yes. Kojo, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for calling us, Fred. What's your question for the Deputy Chief of Staff?
To Deputy Chief of Staff, he should have known, Jinapor should have known everything. Yeah, I'm telling you. If Jinapor shouldn't tell you, I'm no update, I'm not this. No. Jinapor knows what is happening in there. Now, Kojo, as Jinapor, Fumra donation. Jinapor, if you are bereaved and your friends are coming to sympathize with you, are you to take money from the taxpayers, the poor taxpayers, money to donate Jinapor? I'm asking Jinapor, if you are bereaved and your friends are coming from the to sympathize with you, are you to pump your money into our taxpayers? Let me tell something. I'm driving this morning. I drive 4x4. Master, I park the car and take throttle because I can't afford the fuel. So you know what? I leave the car at a point, take throttle to the further destination, and then take throttle back and pick my car again. It wasn't like that. So you people punishing us, making ranting. The president is not like that. President is not like that. Like, we are not fools, so I'm telling you.
Oh, thank you for calling us. Let's go to University of Ghana, where Ejari is on the line. Ejari, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I hope you're doing well.
I'm well. Thanks for calling us.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to extend my greetings to Mr. Samuel Jinapor, the Deputy Chief of Staff.
Sure.
Yes, I'd like to ask him that I think when he was explaining, in terms of the fact that government has not spent a lot of money, out of the budgetary allocation that Parliament approved, he once also said that in 2014, the NDC government expended, more than they were supposed to have done. And I'm asking him, so since that was done, does it mean the government is also not doing anything about it in terms of, holding them accountable? Because I don't think if you're supposed to spend 10 cedis and you spend 70 cedis, it falls within, our quest, of fighting corruption or something like that. So what is the government doing since they have detected that that particular error was done? So what's the way of rectifying that? By holding the NDP accountable for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Pig Farm next. Here's Clement. Clement, good morning.
Good morning, Kojo.
Thanks for calling us. What's your question?
Yeah, please. Can Abu Jinapor promise Ghanaians that the question that you ask him and he is not able to answer, will he finish you with them so that you will let the Ghanaians know, especially the school fees and then the friends that you were asking him and he was not able to answer? And then the funerals that they spend the money on. Can you promise Ghanaians on your platform that you will finish with the details so that you will let we Ghanaians know what is going on?
Okay, thank you. Let's take one more question and then we'll get answers and then come back for another block. John is in Usu. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Kojo and Jinapor. This goes to Jinapor, and I'm just a little bit confused about the figures. Are they telling us to spend 62 million Ghana cedis? And we can't even afford anything. We can't even afford, people are dying in the hospital and they have to spend all this money. And then, trying to explain himself, or defend the government, but I'm not getting him at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, John. So I think we have 5 questions to go on, or at least 4 questions out of 5 calls. So yeah, Mr. Jinapor, let's.
Well, thank you, Kojo.
Hear you.
First, Uncle Kwame and Fred, they made comments, and they are entitled to make those comments. Mr. Ajare asked about getting NDC government to account. What it is that there are processes. The Public Financial Management Act and the audit laws of our country. The Auditor General will audit the books of government and take the necessary processes, Public Accounts Committee. And we do know that in some cases people are surcharged and some other measures are put in place to make sure that people account for these conduct. But I made the point just to establish the fact that there is a lot of discipline, financial discipline, at the office of the Chief of Staff now, and which is why we've been able to keep within the budgetary allocation by Parliament. Now, Clement is talking about me making a commitment to provide the details of FUNRA. I mean, I'll check it out. If I check it out and I get that information, I'll put it before you. I'll give it to you. Now,
that information does exist somewhere.
It should exist. It should exist, and I'll look for it. Okay. Now, Kojo, the thing about funerals, donation, and the rest, I think I've made that point, and we probably will have to have that conversation. Now, if the president or myself or anybody is invited to participate in a funeral in our personal capacity, or we go there to mourn with our friends, we do make donations with our own resources. But as I gave some examples, there are some funerals which the state, not us as individuals, the state plays a role. And in those cases, the state makes provision, financial provisions for it. And I gave you 2 or 3 examples. And I find it I'm very reluctant and uncomfortable in giving such details because
but the
there should be some discretion.
Just to clarify, the cost item on this list that we are discussing is funeral donations. It's not the organizing of a funeral. It's funeral donations.
Yeah, I'm saying. So if there's a funeral where an official is invited in an official capacity and the person has to make a donation, if there's a funeral which requires the participation of the state, and I, for instance, I'm delegated, I don't know the bereaved family or the bereaved person from Adam, and I'm delegated to represent the country or the state, and I'm required to make a donation. But it's something that we can look at as a country. But finally,
how about the school fees, though?
Well, I said I'll check all of that. I'll check all of that. But I've already given the context within which this may happen, which is staff welfare and motivation and what have you. But I'll check that. Now, the foreign travel, I think it's important we keep making the point that, and for some people who are, with respect, probably motivated by political considerations, they may find it appropriate to put it in the way that they put it. The president has spent 60-something million on foreign. That is not correct. President Akufo-Addo has not spent 60-something million or 62 million on foreign travels. I've given you the headings under which these foreign travels do take place, including Kojo. In some cases where the office deems it appropriate to support certain personalities for foreign travels, for medicals or whatever. And I mean certain personalities, not government officials. And I'm not going to give the details here. And I believe that if the details were put out, the Ghanaian people will find it justified. Not government officials. Let me emphasize, not government officials.
But that does raise the question. It raised the question of the propriety of such expenditure. Bearing in mind, as a nation, we are falling behind on revenue targets. So is this the year in which we should be spending money on, hospital bills and welfare and school fees?
This is the year we should all be disciplined. This is the year we should have disciplined financial management. And I've said this on authority that the government of President Akufo-Addo is very disciplined and guards the public kitty with a lot of care.
But we overspent on travel.
But let's also be careful. And I'm saying, I'm not putting out details. I mean, I'll give you an example. When President Truman left office in the United States and became a pauper, more or less, and the American people had to amend their act which regulates the conditions of welfare of their former presidents, which culminated into the former President's Act of the United States, and which made some basic financial provision and arrangement for their former president. I'm not suggesting that there's a case of former president's medical bills being paid for foreign trips. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying that in some very exceptional circumstances where the state or the government thinks that we've all been in Ghana where people have paid their dues to our country, either musicians or entertainers or public servants or people who have done extraordinary things for the country or have put up extraordinary conduct which help with the country and so on and so forth. And the Ghanaian people themselves feel that government should have intervened in this. Government should have come in to support this particular person. These are some of the situations I'm talking about. All of those come under the rubric of foreign travels. And I'd like to emphasize that these foreign travel components of the budget is not foreign travels by the president. Now, the final one, somebody made a point about the presidential jet. And the history of presidential jets in our country, I'm not sure we have time to go into that.
No.
When President Kufuor ordered for 2 jets, 1 big one, 1 small one, and the government of Professor Mills, may he so rest in peace, elected to pick the small one as opposed to the big one, and the propriety or otherwise of that decision is another matter. But here we have this Falcon little jet, which long hauls becomes very unsafe. And you recall on one occasion where the president left New York or is Washington, and on his way 2 hours into airborne, the aircraft had to be turned around and landed, emergency landing at I think New York, an airport in New York or so, or Washington, and became a big national issue. We all discussed it in our country. And the handlers of the president, people who fly the president, they make the determination whether this Falcon is capable of traveling from, say, Accra to Washington, or that it can just travel from Accra to Tamale or Lagos or the rest. I know the president uses this jet to within the country, within the sub-region, within Africa. The technical people are those who are able to make the conclusion as to whether this jet and this thing, when you politicize it, that one it will resonate with some constituency. But
no, I'd rather we didn't.
I'm not here to do that. I'm dealing with the issues as they are, and I've told you, President Akufo-Addo, the first 2 or so years of his administration, and sometimes I speak to this with a heavy heart because I know him. He's not the type who is interested in extravagancy or profligacy. The first 2 years he kept to this Falcon, this little jet, which I've sat in it a couple of times. You literally cannot even move your leg, but he sat in it for 2 years and traveled across the world with it. It turned out that this jet was not fit for long hauls, and on one occasion from New York, the jet was 2 hours in the air, and he had to be turned around.
Yes, I mean,
so we can look at all of that. There's no deliberate conduct on the part of the president or the chief of staff to spend money. Why will he do that?
So I know that the president is very passionate about improving governance structures. Is it not perhaps time for us to start making certain rules around things like funeral donations and welfare
I see you are
donations?
very passionate about.
No, I mean, it's not about the amount. It's about the principle.
The principle,
and tomorrow it may not be President Akufo-Addo, it may be someone else in office. We have to make sure that there are things in place that make sure that nobody can come and abuse the system to their benefit. So that's why I'm asking: is it not time for us to make some rules around funeral donations and other welfare items? Should there not perhaps be a particular account for that, where you request approval for a certain amount, a fixed amount, and that is dedicated to all such things throughout the year, so that you can never spend beyond that, and it's not a matter of discretion, what you spend on a funeral, on school
and
fees.
who is qualified, and what circumstances in which the donation can be made.
Yes, is it not about time we did that?
That we should have that discussion. I agree with you entirely. Now, that said, I can say also to you that when it comes to the exercise of discretion in terms of expenditure, I'm very quick to say the Chief of Staff is absolutely rigorous and firm when it comes to those things. I mean, sometimes to a fault. I mean, she will check everything out and make sure that such expenditure are called for. Okay. Now, we can have that conversation. But could you let me also tell you that perhaps if you put a microphone before a lot of people, they will tell you all kinds of views. But if you do a quiet, honest interrogation of our population as to funeral donation, you'll be very surprised that your view will be very unpopular.
Okay,
well, do it in Joy FM here, and
let's see. We actually have
an attachment to our funerals and the rest. I'm not saying that because of that we use taxpayers' money, but I'm saying in some exceptional and appropriate circumstances, it may be in the interest of the office or the corporate good of the entity, for the entity to show some care or some gesture for purposes of motivating staff.
All right, let's take a few more calls. Kwabena is in Sawam. Good morning, Kwabena. I think we may have lost Kwabena there, but Edmund is in Awudome Estates. Edmund, good morning.
Good morning, Kojo.
Thank you for calling us. What's your question?
Yeah, I want to ask Abu Jinapor. He was saying that the amount you asked him on donations includes staff welfare and all that. How possible? Like motivating staff and giving them bonuses and all that. Why should that fall under donations?
Okay, we've noted that question, and you can call us to 0302-216-541, 0244-340-437. Bring your questions, and we'll get you answers. Shall we take a few more so you can answer them all together, Mr. Jinapor? Shem is in Pram. Shem, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Kojo.
Thanks for calling.
How are you?
I'm good. So, what's your question?
It's not a question. My own is, why do we cry over spilt milk? The milk has already been spilled. The questions will not answer it. What I need to tell them is Akufo-Addo has failed us tremendously. And I'm not partisan. Likewise, Mahama did. Likewise, Akufo-Addo. Somebody who said he's going to keep track of the public press, and you come and you are using my public money to go and donate money to somebody who works in the government agency. Look at the money you guys take. You can't have a welfare policy and go and pay money to funeral contributions. You're telling me my taxpayers' money is supposed to be used. Whilst on the motorway yesterday, there's no light on the motorway. Is that what we need? We channel our taxes for, Kujo? Come on, man. They should come clean to us. Both MPP and NDC. We've had enough of them. We've had enough. Why? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for calling us. Let's go to Kufuridia. Salifu is on the line. Good morning, Salifu.
Good morning, Kujo. How are you?
I'm well. Good to hear from you, Salifu.
Kujo, my first question is to you. Did you invite the deputy chief staff, or he just walked into your studio?
Oh, we always invite our guests to our studio, and they are gracious to heed our invitation.
Very good. So you had some questionnaires for him before he came, and he's come. He cannot even provide you with any tangible answer. Oh, this one he's giving lectures. You wanted explanation, because yesterday the NDC people criticized all these figures. So as we invited him, you should have come with some documents detailing all the expenditure. What is wrong? Was he not part of the chief of staff who did the budget to Parliament? So why is he running away that he cannot give details? I mean, we don't want these lectures. And I was very upset about you, Kujo. But because of your second question that you always follow, I just said that yes, you are doing a good job. But you allowed him to be doing lectures for more than 30 minutes. We want answers. Funeral donations. If they invite you, can't you take your money? I don't know, paying them. Can't you take your own money to do funeral donations? School fees is free. Now you are paying school fees to whom? And you cannot give details. Sorry for these government officials.
Salifu, thank you for your call. Gino, I think we'll get answers to these issues before we continue, Mr. Jinapor.
Yeah. So, Kojo, I did not give details of the 10,000 Ghana cedis which is supposed to have been captured as funeral donations. I did not give you the basis for it. I did not. I told you that I'll check on that and get back to you. That's what I said.
Yes.
So yeah, 10,000 Ghana cedis. That's what it is. And I did not. One of your callers, Edmond, made the point that I said it's for welfare. No, I haven't said.
I think that was school fees that you were.
Yeah, I was. I know that happens in several corporate entities.
So they are asking the question.
Yes, I'll get you the answers. I'll get you the answers, and and I'm not engaged in any comparison here. I've said before that it's one of the things that I know many government offices tend to do. You have said we should have a national discussion on it. I'm very happy for us to have that discussion, but I've not given any categorical answers to that. But anyway, I mean, the people get to be passionate about issues that they find important, and we have no quarrel with that. That's the beauty of our democracy. They're entitled to hold those views. But for me, what is absolutely fundamental for me is the fact that we have moved into the era of financial discipline where government agencies are now keeping within budgets approved by Parliament, and particularly the Office of the Chief of Staff, which has notoriety for budgetary overruns, and that on this occasion, that office has kept within budget. For me, that is very encouraging. We can continue with the discussion, continue with the interrogation, continue with the passion and what is important to us as a country and as a people. That is actually in accord with the principles of democratic accountability. I welcome that totally, and we should keep up with it. But most importantly, the Chief of Staff has demonstrated frugality, she's demonstrated discipline and prudence, and she's kept within the budget allocated to her by Parliament.
Okay, Mr. Jinapor, since you've promised us those details that we asked for, we will follow up and bring them to our audience. But we certainly thank you very much for your time with us this morning. We appreciate it. We know you have to rush to other things. So thank you very much, and we'll pick it up later.
Thank you very much, Kojo, and good morning and best wishes to your cherished listeners. Thank you.
Right, so that was Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff. He works at the Office of the President, and of course, he was our guest on the Super Morning Show. Our other guest, about whom we're also very excited, is Manifest, and he joins us for so much conversation in just a short while on today's agenda. That's after these. When times are